Begin this morning with breaking news out of Turkey and Syria.
Overnight, two massive earthquakes struck southeastern Turkey. Their magnitude 7.8 and 7.6. The quakes caused widespread devastation and a catastrophic loss of life, both in Turkey and across the border in northern Syria. The combined death toll now stands at more than 1,300, according to officials in both countries. It is a staggering figure, one that is expected to rise as search and rescue efforts continue. Let's get right out to NBC News foreign correspondent Megan Fitzgerald with the very latest. So, Megan, I mean, this is just a huge disaster that's unfolding right now in two countries. Let's talk about the situation in Turkey, where the epicenter is. How are rescue operations going there?
Joe, good morning. Good to be with you. I mean, this is an absolutely dire and certainly devastating situation. I mean, as you mentioned, the death toll just continues to soar right now, soaring past 1,000 in both countries, where thousands of more are feared to be injured. I mean, this is something that Turkey has not seen in more than 100 years, a 7.8 magnitude earthquake, the largest that they have ever seen. So you can imagine the devastation. The pictures that are coming in are just incredible. I mean, buildings collapsed, people trapped underneath the rubble, first responders rushing to the scene, trying to pull people out, the chaotic situation where people are screaming for their family members that they can't locate, all while first responders are telling people to remain silent so that they can listen to the cries for help of people that are trapped beneath the rubble as they work to try and pull them out and rush them to safety. We know also that we've seen toddlers and children being pulled from the rubble, passed from first responder to first responder. First responders are doing everything they can to try and save people, but the entire world is watching what is no doubt a humanitarian crisis unfold.
Yeah, and we have to keep in mind, I mean, this quake hit in an area that is home to millions of Syrian refugees. How are we hearing as far as Syria coping with this tragedy? How are they coping with it?
Yeah, Joe, it's absolutely devastating. I mean, as you mentioned, this is an earthquake that hit, and then, of course, another one that hit in the middle of the night when people were sleeping. We know that Syrian officials have activated the military from all across the country to rush to the northern part of the country to try and help. A similar scene to what we're seeing in Turkey, where buildings have collapsed, homes in rubble. It's a race against time, essentially, to try and pull people from the rubble to try and save their lives. I mean, we're hearing from a spokesperson for the Syrian Civil Defense who has this desperate plea to the world to try and help his people. I want you to listen to a little bit of what he had to say.
It's a very difficult task for us. We need help. We need the international community to do something to help us, to support us. Northwest Syria now, it's a disaster area. We need help from everyone to save our people.
Yeah, on the verge of tears. I mean, you can just listen to the desperation in his voice as they are now calling on the world to rush in because, again, this is a race against time as people are trapped beneath the rubble. And, of course, keep in mind that this is in the depths of winter. We've already heard from Turkey talking about how that has impacted the ability of first responders to respond in some instances. So, again, Joe, just a dire situation unfolding.
Yeah, Megan, I mean, we hear those pleas for help from the international community. We know reaction is pouring in from the international community so far. No doubt more help will be coming. That includes, reaction from the White House. What are we hearing there?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The White House putting out a statement that I'm going to read shortly. But we've also heard from the president of Turkey, President Erdogan, saying that some 45 countries have reached out and they continue to reach out, offering help with search and rescue. Everything from countries like India to Germany and Poland, even war-torn Ukraine. President Zelensky offering his assistance as well, doing everything they can to try and help the people of Turkey. I want to read for you this statement from the White House. Jake Sullivan putting out the statement. He says, quote, "We stand ready to provide any and all needed assistance. President Biden has directed U.S. aid and other federal government partners to assess U.S. response options to help those most affected. We will continue to closely monitor the situation in coordination with the government of Turkey." Now, it certainly stands out the fact that Syria was not mentioned here. It's unclear as to what help, if any, the U.S. will provide to Turkey and its allies. So, of course, that is something that we'll be watching. But again, the world is watching a humanitarian crisis unfold. Joe.
All right, Megan Fitzgerald on this breaking news, the tragedy in Turkey and Syria. Megan, thank you.
Also this morning, U.S. Navy ships are searching for remnants of the Chinese spy balloon that was shot down Saturday off the coast of South Carolina. President Biden directed the military to take it down over the weekend, officially ending the week-long saga. The high-altitude surveillance tool was first detected on January 28th in Alaska. Its path eventually crossed over into Montana, then southeast across the U.S. and into the Carolinas, flying over sensitive military sites along the way. Republicans blasted the president's handling of the situation, saying the balloon should have been shot down much sooner, while administration officials say the president's actions weaken China's surveillance capabilities. Senators are scheduled to receive a briefing on the balloon on February 15th. So for more, we are joined by NBC News correspondent George Solis from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. George, good morning. Can you just take us through the latest on the recovery effort right there and how long it could take to recover all these pieces of the balloon?
Yeah, good morning, Zinkley. Well, we can expect that more Navy divers and recovery ships will be out searching that 7-mile debris field here off the coast of the Carolinas. We know that a lot of this debris fell in about 47 feet of water, which is much better than what the Pentagon had expected. They actually thought a lot of this debris was going to fall in deeper water. And of course, right now, the concern from across the Carolinas is as some of this debris is expected to wash up on shore, it's making sure that people do not mess with it, do not take it home. That includes the tourists and the locals that live here, because of course doing so could mean that you are interfering with a federal investigation. As for some of the debris that is collected here, well, we are hearing that it will be taken to Quantico in Virginia for further FBI analysis. Guys?
And George, now that the balloon is actually down out of the sky, what's the process for examining the remains, and how much does the intelligence community expect to actually learn from this?
Yeah, quite a bit, frankly. I mean, they're looking for those pieces of the balloon debris as well as any equipment that might have been on board that, of course, will shed light on any of the Chinese spying capabilities. So it's so crucial for crews to recover as much of this debris as possible. Even a small little part could obviously lead to some of the more nuance of what was on board this spy balloon. And it is worth noting that the government does expect there to be some evidence and some equipment of gear on board that balloon that was capable of taking some high quality photos, I should say. Zinkley?
A lot to watch there. George Solis, thank you so much.
For more on this, we are joined by NBC News military analyst and former deputy commander of the United States European Command, Lieutenant General Steph Twitty. Thank you so much for joining us. So a couple questions here. What do you think the U.S. is going to learn as the military recovers the remnants of this balloon? And do you think the balloon was really able to gather any intelligence that China couldn't gather with its spy satellites?
Yeah, good to be with you this morning. I think what the military is doing now, they want to ensure that they get every single inch of this technology so they can take it back to the Quantico lab, exploit it, do forensics on it to see whether or not it was signal intelligence or whether it was some other type of intelligence that will allow the Chinese to glean more than they can glean than from the satellites that they have currently watching us now. What I will tell you is it's hard for me to believe that this balloon can do more than their satellite technology. Perhaps maybe this balloon was used to look at pattern of life on our silos, number, training capabilities we have. We just don't know yet. And so let's give this investigation time, and we'll probably see whether or not this is some advanced technology that the Chinese have more than what their satellites can provide.
We now know this is not the first time something like this has happened. Balloons have passed over the U.S. several times, including during the Trump administration. What, if anything, do you think made this one different?
Well, the biggest difference is it broke U.S. airspace, and as you know, it stayed in U.S. airspace for about 7 days. So the audacity of the Chinese to break U.S. airspace tells us something, that they really want to take a hard look at what we have. As you know, it started basically sitting over Montana, and we have some very sensitive sites there. So it tells me that they're really looking at our nuclear capability and perhaps trying to figure out our triad in our nuclear response capabilities.
Let's talk big picture here. I mean, from Taiwan to concerns over TikTok, we know U.S. and China relations have been very tense recently. Secretary of State Antony Blinken canceled his planned trip to Beijing in the wake of this balloon drama. And just last month, U.S. four-star Air Force General Mike Minahan warned he expects the U.S. is going to be at war with China in 2025. I mean, in your mind, how realistic is that?
Well, what I will tell you is that there's plenty of competition and mutual distrust between both countries right now. But what we can't do is allow this to spill over into conflict. You're looking at the two largest economies in the world. You're looking at the two largest militaries in the world. And so it's very important that we keep dialogue open, given the things that have occurred. And so I expect us to work through this. This is a huge bump on the Chinese, but at the end of the day, we have to keep the dialogue open because world economies depend on us in this dialogue. To also, world military depend on us in this dialogue as well.
All right, Lieutenant General Steph Twitty, thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
And that downed Chinese spy balloon dominated the conversation on Meet the Press yesterday. Here's Chuck Todd introducing his exclusive interview with Congressman Mike Turner.
Hello there, Joe and Zinkley. This week on Meet the Press, I spoke with the Republican Congressman Mike Turner. He's chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, a member of that so-called Gang of Eight in Congress, to discuss the Chinese spy balloon that floated across the U.S. before being shot down off the Carolina coast. Take a look at what he had to say.
You know, clearly the president taking it down over the Atlantic is sort of like the quarterback, sort of like tackling the quarterback after the game is over. The satellite had completed its mission. This should never have been allowed to enter the United States, and it never should have been allowed to complete its mission. If you ask somebody to draw an X at every place where our sensitive missile defense sites, our nuclear weapons infrastructure, our nuclear weapons sites are, you would put them all along this path. Clearly, this was an attempt by China to gather information to defeat our command and control of our sensitive missile defense and nuclear weapon sites, and that certainly is an urgency that this administration does not recognize.
Do you think we should have a policy that just anything that enters our airspace that's a balloon from China gets shot down immediately?
Well, first off, you have to understand this administration didn't just fail here. They failed to prepare after the first time this happened during this administration. The administration's already admitted, which I've been briefed on, that China has done this before in the continental United States during this president's tenure.
When did that happen?
You have to let them release it. I can't release classified information, but they can tell you.
We also briefed on that there was apparently 2 or 3 incidents in the previous administration as well.
Well, that's what they're saying now. But I think that the administration needs to come forward because this is not an ability to say that this is a crisis that was handed to them. This is a crisis that has developed as a result of this president during his administration, allowing China to do a similar act before, not responding, and then clearly in this one, not seeing the urgency of what was unfolding.
You can see a lot more of my full interview and more at meetthepress.com. You can also get more Meet the Press right here on NBC News Now every weekday at 4 p.m.
Chuck Todd, thank you so much.
The Biden administration's handling of the suspected Chinese spy balloon is just one of the things on the minds of Americans as the president prepares for his second State of the Union address. So what can we expect tomorrow night? NBC News White House correspondent Carol Lee joins us now with the preview. So, Carol, good morning. What do we expect to see be some of the president's main talking points?
Joe, I think one of the main things that you're going to hear from the president tomorrow night is sort of a laundry list of all the things that he has already accomplished. So one of the things officials say the president wants to do is to communicate to the American people that he's gotten things done in his first 2 years. This comes ahead of a period of time in the second half of his term where the White House is not expecting to get a lot of things done with the House Republicans having control. And so he's going to talk about infrastructure bill, his semiconductors manufacturing here in the United States bill, both of which had bipartisan support, and then other bills that Democrats passed by themselves that the president will make the case have helped the economy, that the economic data is trending in the right direction. The challenge the president has with that is that Americans aren't really feeling it, and it's not bearing fruit in his approval numbers. So he's going to try to get Americans to understand what he's done and try to make this case that he is working for them and that they will start to feel the benefits more and more as the year goes on.
Let's talk more about Americans not feeling it. President Biden's State of the Union comes at a time when confidence is low, and we're looking ahead, of course, to the 2024 presidential election. A new poll from the Washington Post and ABC News finds 62% of Americans say they would be dissatisfied or angry if President Biden were reelected in 2024. Only 37% right now approve of his handling of the economy. So, I mean, the stakes are pretty high. What message does the president need to send to Americans during this crucial time? I mean, does the White House feel the pressure here?
They definitely do, and this is the largest audience the president is going to have the entire year, that millions and millions of Americans tune in. And so this is an opportunity as well as a challenge for him. But the opportunity from the White House's perspective is for the president to try to move those numbers. And the way that the White House hopes that he can do that is to talk about the things that the president has gotten done to try to convince Americans, 44% of whom don't approve of his performance in office right now, according to the NBC News poll recently. And so what he's going to do is try to lay out why he is taking the economy, in particular, on the right track. Take a listen to Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, talk about this yesterday.
There are so many accomplishments to talk about, and many of those accomplishments happened on a bipartisan basis. Record low unemployment, lowest we've had in more than 50 years. Right now, inflation is going down along with unemployment. We're talking about the most jobs created under any president in this period. The president's going to be going into this State of the Union speech with a context of extraordinary, historic accomplishment.
So here's the other thing the president has to do, Joe, tomorrow, and this is all also bears out in polling, and that is show Americans that he is up for the job, that he has the energy, that he can get through this speech and not make many mistakes. There's real questions about his age that Americans have, including a lot of Democrats. And so that's something that the country's also going to be watching for. How does he perform? How does he execute on this?
Yeah, it's not just about the content, but also the optics as well. Carol Lee, thanks for that preview. Appreciate it. And we're going to have full team coverage of President Biden's State of the Union address tomorrow night, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on NBC News Now.
Now to weather. The East Coast could see more storm systems headed its way.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman's with us this morning with your Morning News Now forecast. Hey there, Michelle.
Good morning. Great to see you both. And yeah, we're watching some storms in some parts of the country today, some winter weather, but a really big welcome warm up in portions of the southern plains. Temperatures 10 to 20 to 30 degrees above normal for this time of year. And we're going to see temperatures in Texas into the upper 70s to low 80s. So a big difference from the frigid air they had last week. Let's start with the winter weather, though. We're looking at wintry weather moving through portions of the Intermountain West. We're going to see heavy snow falling, also wind. And then we're looking at a cold front stretching from portions of the northern plains into the southern plains. We're going to see snow, rain, freezing rain also in portions of the northern plains. That's mainly this morning, and then by this afternoon, this evening, seeing a mixture of rain and snow in portions of the upper Midwest, also the upper Great Lakes. This is going to move slowly to the east as we head throughout the next few days. So we're looking by tomorrow into the Ohio Valley with some rain, heavy rain falling throughout portions of the mid-Mississippi Valley and the southern plains. You could see some strong to severe storms. That mainly would be in portions of Texas into Louisiana, also into portions of Mississippi. The best chance, though, would be in portions of Texas and also Louisiana, where we could see some strong storms, even a few tornadoes there. By Wednesday, those showers slowly shifting into the Mississippi Valley. We could see up to 3 to 4 inches of rain. So heavy rain falling, especially where you see those brighter colors, the reds, the oranges, also the yellows. This is where we're expecting the severe weather threat tomorrow. Winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, damaging hail, also a tornado or two is possible, and that is mainly in parts of Texas and Louisiana. And there's a bullseye for that heavy rain, Poplar Bluff, Memphis, Little Rock. Again, the darker colors indicating where we expect that heavy rain falling. So really stretching from the Ohio Valley. And we'll end it here because this is good news. We are welcoming this relief in terms of that warm weather. Houston, 75, 12 degrees above what is typical for this time of year, and warm too in Nashville. Back to you guys.
All right, drastic difference from just a couple days ago. All right, Michelle, thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome back. An FAA investigation is underway after a near collision was averted at Austin's airport over the weekend. Authorities say a FedEx cargo plane and a Southwest Airlines flight were cleared to use the same runway at the same time. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky explains how one pilot's quick instincts help prevent a potential disaster.
In Austin, an airport crisis caught just in time, starting when a FedEx flight approached early Saturday morning.
Confirm FedEx 1432 Heavy, clear to land on 18 left.
FedEx 1432 Heavy, that is affirmative. 18 left, you are clear to land. Traffic departing cross route to 737.
That radio traffic now critical evidence due to what happened next. The FAA saying before the FedEx aircraft was due to land, the controller cleared Southwest Flight 708 to depart from the same runway. Potentially complicating matters, a freezing fog so dense, officials had issued a weather advisory.
There's no visibility, so you can't see the other airplanes.
Aviation expert John Cox says conditions were flyable, but warranted caution. And as the two planes grew dangerously close, you can hear someone tell Southwest to stop.
Southwest aboard. FedEx is on the go.
On the go, meaning the FedEx pilot cut the landing short, pulling the plane into a climb for safety.
How differently could this have played out without the caution of that FedEx crew?
Had the FedEx crew not initiated a go-around, these airplanes would have been potentially very close or even possibly collided.
At New York's JFK Airport, a similar close call just weeks ago.
Delta 1943, cancel takeoff clearance.
An American Airlines flight forced a Delta jet to abort takeoff after somehow crossing the same runway. American promising a full internal investigation. And at Newark, on Friday, a Boeing 787 clipped wings with a United flight as it left the gate. No one was hurt, but the FAA says the impact snapped off a small piece of the wing.
And we've learned both the NTSB and the FAA are investigating this incident here at Austin Airport. Of course, they're going to be looking at those flight data recorders, but also that radio traffic, which will be critical in showcasing who knew what and when. Morgan Chesky, NBC News, Austin.
Morgan, thank you. And the second full week of the Alec Murdaugh trial gets underway today. The former South Carolina lawyer accused of killing his wife and son.
Last week, we saw evidence and testimony about where the prosecution says Murdaugh could have been on the night of the murders. Murdaugh has maintained that he was nowhere near the scene of the crime. Our legal analyst, Danny Savalos, joins us now with the latest on the trial. So first of all, it's Monday morning, so let's catch folks up on what happened Friday. Were there any big bombshells there?
We had some ballistic experts, which might have been a wash. Now, the defense last week cross-examined this expert and rather challenged the underlying science itself. That leads me to believe they may not have an expert of their own. When you challenge that science, it's a little weird to put on your own expert in the same science. But really most interesting to me is the out-of-jury hearing on the financial records. I know we've talked about this before, and in a way, I think the prosecution is making a misstep. They may benefit if they lose this motion, and I don't blame them. Prosecutors have to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt, so they're often they have a tendency to overkill, to load on the evidence. And this is an example of what I think might be a problem. You bring in that financial evidence, and the prosecution's theory becomes this guy had all these financial problems, therefore he thought he would get sympathy by killing his wife and child. I can see jurors saying, what? And I almost sense that in your face, that you might be thinking the same thing, that they might do better by just putting in all the circumstantial evidence. We've got these shell casings, they can cross-examine it, but this whole idea that someone would be worried and would want to garner sympathy by killing his wife and kid, bananas.
And Danny, you mentioned circumstantial evidence, so let's talk about it, because I know that during cross-examination it was brought up about potential missteps in preserving the crime scene, and they've also relied a lot on circumstantial evidence. So how is this playing into this case?
There's a common misunderstanding that circumstantial evidence is somehow bad evidence, and it's often more airtight than direct evidence. Direct evidence is just eyewitness testimony. I saw someone shoot the sheriff, right? But eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable. Our memories fade. We're affected by things like adrenaline and stress. So in a way, circumstantial evidence can be even more powerful. And the fact that they're attacking the crime scene, it tells me that their defense is centered not so much around, hey, some other dude did it, SODDI, as we say in the defense biz, and more pointing at shoddy investigation and the classic tunnel vision. They started looking at Murdaugh early, and they let the real bad guy go. They may not make much effort to prove who that real bad guy was, but that would be ideal. But instead, they're just going to say reasonable doubt, they're not there, shoddy investigation, tunnel vision.
All right, Danny Savalos, we'll keep watching it throughout the week here. Thank you so much, Danny. Appreciate it.
Thank you. International headlines now. National security is at the forefront as a landmark trial begins in Hong Kong.
NBC News foreign correspondent Claudio Lavanga joined us now from Rome with that and other world headlines. Claudio, good morning.
That's right. Good morning. We start in Hong Kong today, where a landmark case against China's national security law begins. The 16 people on trial were a part of a group known as the Hong Kong 47. The pro-democracy activists were arrested back in 2021 after participating in an unofficial primary election. Their efforts broke sweeping national security law imposed by Beijing, established to crack down on anti-government retaliation. Those on trial include a former lawmaker known by his nickname Long Hair, who said during his plea it is not a crime to oppose totalitarianism. The 16 who plead not guilty are facing charges that could send them to prison for life. Turning now to the slopes, where deadly avalanches across Western Austria and Switzerland killed at least 10 over the weekend. At the time, Austrian authorities put out a level 4 avalanche alert, meaning very large avalanches are likely. Even experienced skiers were encouraged to stay away from the steep terrain. Despite the warnings, tourists typically made their way to the resorts in the area during the February holiday. The death toll includes tourists from New Zealand, China, and Germany. And we finish off aboard the papal plane back from South Sudan, where on Sunday Pope Francis, the head of the Anglican Communion, and a top Presbyterian minister held an in-flight press conference. All three spiritual leaders say LGBTQ people should be welcomed by their churches. Pope Francis referred back to his original comments from a few weeks ago, repeating that laws against homosexuality are, quote, unjust, and that being homosexual is not a crime. Now, I was on that plane back from South Sudan, where, by the way, homosexuality is still a crime, and I got to ask Pope Francis a question about Ukraine. He said that he's still open to dialogue and to meet with both Zelensky and Putin, but also said that there are other wars in the world, like Myanmar and Syria and others in Latin America, and he warned that the world is self-destructing and that we should seriously stop and think, guys.
Right. Claudio, thank you so much for sharing that conversation, that question you got to ask.
Yeah,
thank you.
Really important. Thank you.
Since the pandemic started, many patients have turned to messaging with doctors with questions about their health and wellness. But many doctors say that answering all those messages takes up a lot of time, and now some healthcare providers are starting to charge for it. NBC News correspondent Kristen Dahlgren takes a closer look.
Dr. Booth. When Meg Richmond has a question for her doctor, this is often the first thing she does.
It's so much easier just to send a message, ask a simple question, and get his opinion. Is this something I need to come in for?
On the other end, at the Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Eric Boos answers not just Meg's message, but requests from dozens of patients.
How many messages do you get a day?
Before and after the pandemic, it's actually doubled.
That's a lot of extra work.
And it's not time that's set aside for us to do.
For Boos and other doctors, it means many hours of their own time every day spent answering messages. Some have actually had to cut back on the hours they see patients. So the Cleveland Clinic is one of at least 10 major healthcare systems now charging for some communications. Boos says a nominal fee applies to less than 1% of digital interactions. Most are covered by insurance, and the bill is never more than $50 out of pocket.
This is not about every single message being billed for a patient. This is about certain messages that kind of take a little bit more time for the physician to look at.
Examples of what might be billed: asking about new symptoms, a change to medications, or request to complete medical forms. Things like appointment scheduling, refills, or a question that leads to an appointment or follow-up remains free. But patient advocate Cynthia Fisher says it's a step too far.
Now you're adding yet another level of charging patients
where patients are going to be surprised by these bills.
At Brigham and Women's Hospital, they haven't started charging for portal messaging. But Dr. Eve Rittenberg has researched the increased workload for physicians. She says she spends up to 5 hours answering messages for every 4 hours she spends with patients.
Is there a risk in losing doctors to burnout because of the increased workload?
I think that's the real crisis. Studies showing, rates of 50-60% burnout among U.S. doctors.
Back in Ohio, Meg and her husband Bob think a small fee is fair.
I could just go on Google and ask the same question and get 10 different answers. But I want to hear from Dr. Booth.
With doctors now at our fingertips, one more question you may want to ask, is that message costing you? Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News, Cleveland.
And staying with medical news, one hospital in Florida is going high-tech with patient care. Doctors at the University of Florida Health Center are using artificial intelligence to help monitor their patients. NBC News senior medical correspondent Dr. John Torres has more on this groundbreaking technology.
Good. Michael Dieter has been awaiting a lung transplant at the University of Florida Health Center since December.
I'm what you call high flow air. And because of that, I can't sustain myself at home.
A dedicated team of doctors and nurses attend to him day and night. But that's not all. Sensors and cameras track Dieter's every move in this smart intensive care unit, from vital signs to facial expressions and everything in between.
Every place in this room will sensing something about you. Is this enough light? Is this enough noise? Are you okay? Are you moving enough? Are you in your bed? Are you out of the bed? I think that's the future of how we will design hospital.
More than 350 gigabytes of information per patient goes into a central computer, where artificial intelligence then processes the data.
We could look at the patient and go, they're moving a lot. There's something going on there. Or their face has a certain grimace to it that they normally don't have. Is it possible that it could tell you before I even know that I'm having problems?
Yes, 100%. We will be able to decipher complex features, complex emotions like agitation or hunger.
Funded by the National Institutes of Health, the high-tech experiment enters its third year. Researchers are still teaching the technology what certain actions like sitting and standing might indicate. The hope that AI will soon be able to provide real-time healthcare recommendations.
Nurses, doctors, we spend a considerable amount of time paperwork, translating the data we get.
You will actually have representation of the data in a way that you as a human can just understand and action.
But will this new technology replace the need for humans in the hospital altogether?
They are very simplistic models compared to what our brains are doing. And I don't think that we should be worried about humans being replaced anytime soon.
This technology does take big burden off the physicians and nurses and provide them time to actually engage what we are here for, taking care of the patients.
A new holistic approach to healthcare where humans and computers work hand in hand. Dr. John Torres, NBC News, Gainesville, Florida.
We're back with financial news. Tech is taking another major hit as Dell plans job cuts.
CNBC's Pippa Stevens joins us now with more on that and other money news. Good morning, Pippa.
Good morning. Well, Dell is planning to cut more than 6,600 jobs, which Bloomberg reports is about 5% of the company's workforce. Dell has faced plunging demand for PCs. An industry tracker, IDC, says shipments dropped sharply in the fourth quarter of last year, and Dell saw the biggest decline of 37%. The company gets more than half of its revenue from PCs. In a memo, Dell's chief operating officer says previous cost-cutting measures, including a hiring freeze, are no longer enough. And Apple is exploring the idea of launching a more expensive iPhone Ultra, priced above the iPhone Pro and Pro Max models. Bloomberg says the new device could arrive as soon as next year with the iPhone 16 lineup. It's unclear what type of features would come with the Ultra, but it may offer an improved camera, a faster chip, and possibly an even bigger display. And sticking with Apple, it has topped Forbes' annual list of the world's most admired companies for the 16th straight year. The rankings are based on corporate reputation, and categories include innovation, people management, social responsibility, product quality, and long-term investment value. Amazon and Microsoft are tied for second, followed by Berkshire Hathaway and JP Morgan Chase. Wow, man, 16 years at the top. That is a high praise for Apple.
Yeah, no kidding. That's an interesting measurement, the most admired company. It's the admiration we have for a company. So, all right, Pippa, thank you so much.
Thank you. And fresh off her record-breaking night at the Grammys, Beyoncé is gearing up for her world tour. And the Beehive, including me, is ready. Ticketmaster's North American pre-sale for Beyoncé's highly anticipated Renaissance World Tour go on sale today, and fans are hoping to score tickets before they're sold out.
Now, many are worried that it'll be a repeat of last year's Taylor Swift fiasco, and fans face long wait times and all those technical glitches. But Ticketmaster says the process won't break your soul this time around.
But we'll have to see. CNBC's consumer and general assignment reporter Stefan Sykes is here with everything you and really I need to know. So Stefan, this is Beyoncé's first solo tour in 6 whole years. What should we fans know who are hoping to score tickets?
Yeah, so sales start today, and Ticketmaster has already said there won't be enough tickets to go around. They're saying that demand, just based on registration rates for this round, exceeds the number of tickets available by more than 800%. So there's going to be a lot of people today that are hoping to get tickets that are going to be sort of left out in the lurch.
Ouch. So because of that huge demand, a lot of people are worried. They're thinking about the Taylor Swift debacle during the pre-sale last year. So Ticketmaster is saying that its verified fan system is the best way to get tickets. So explain what this verified system is and how it works. I know I used it last year to get Bruce Springsteen tickets, which was a pretty hot ticket, and it worked for me, although others who I wanted to go with, they didn't get the pre-approval, so they couldn't get the tickets. Thankfully, I did. But explain to us how this works.
Yeah, so Ticketmaster, they're really doubling down on the verified fan system, which they say is the best way to ensure that tickets actually go to people and not to automated bots, a part of their booming resale market, right? And so what Ticketmaster is saying is for their verified fans, fans need to sign up ahead of time. They need to be registered with the site. They need to prove that they're human. And they're kind of changing it up a bit this time by staggering sales. Last time, if you remember, the pre-sale for Taylor Swift's Eras Tour, it happened all at once. And so the site just was not able to handle that much, that sort of surge. And so their site crashed. They later had to cancel the public pre-sale. And so they're staggering sales now. They're doing it by 3 different groups: Group A, Group B, Group C. And Group A is going today. Group A includes cities like Los Angeles, Atlanta. And so, you know, there's still going to be a lot of demand. There's still questions as to whether Ticketmaster is ready for that demand, in spite of the staggered sales. So, you know, it'll be their next big test. You know, sales start today at 10, and, you know, we'll see what happens.
And Stefan, I know there are also some reports that Ticketmaster has implemented a new feature. You could say they're trying to upgrade you, and that new feature would stop resellers from selling tickets for more than their original price. What do we know about this?
Yeah, so this isn't confirmed just yet. I've been speaking with Ticketmaster. I've been trying to get an idea of whether this is true or not. But some fans are saying that when they've tried to resell tickets for sales that have already started overseas, they were getting messages saying that the site is not allowing them to resell past its original price. This is also something that the Senate Judiciary Committee is also really pushing Ticketmaster to implement. So I've been trying to get an answer from them, haven't heard back yet. But this, you know, if you remember for the Taylor Swift fiasco, one of the big issues, you know, in addition to all the glitches and the long wait times, was that tickets, once they were bought up by all of these bots, were resold sometimes for more than like double their price. And so, you know, this would be a great feature for Ticketmaster to implement. You know, there's no confirmation yet as to whether or not they'll actually do it. But, you know, fans definitely are hoping that this is a reality.
Yeah, we'll have to see if it's a sweet dream or a beautiful nightmare. Stefan, thank you so much.
Welcome back. Many animals store food for the cold winter months, but one hoarding bird may have taken some extra precautions. When pest control workers were called into a job in California, they found 700 pounds of acorns stored in the walls of a home. The culprit, a very nutty and hungry woodpecker. They say the wily woodpecker pecked holes in the house to hold its acorns, but instead then they fell into spaces in the walls. The crew left the house with around 8 garbage bags full of acorns. An impressive stash that likely made all the other forest dwellers quite jealous. Nick's Extreme Pest Control wrote on his Facebook page that they had never seen anything like this. If I could do the Woody Woodpecker laugh, I would do it right now.
I mean,
but I can't. So.
As you should. And I'm also glad to hear that they'd never seen anything like that. I
yes,
would be a little alarmed. Thanks, Joe. Yep. And a farmer in Alabama secretly helped people at his local pharmacy paying for their medications when they could not afford it. Now, after his passing, his mission is growing, with people across the country paying it forward through donations of their very own. MSNBC anchor Jose Diaz-Balart has this heartwarming story.
Tell me a little bit about your dad.
He was a very kind, generous, caring, I'm going to say godly man.
Her father, Hody Childress, a retired farmer turned secret superhero. It happened here at this Geraldine, Alabama pharmacy.
He just walked in one day and said, "Do you ever have anyone that can't afford their medication?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, the next time that happens, I want you to give this to them and use it for their medication."
It was a $100 bill, but he had one demand.
He just said, "I need you to promise that you won't ever tell where it came from."
From then on, every month, year after year, he came back with the same $100 bill and the same request.
How much did he end up giving?
It would be around $10,000.
Hody was able to keep it secret until last year, when his health started to fail. He turned to his daughter, Tanya Nix.
He said, "I've been doing something for a while that I would like to continue doing." So I brought the money to the drugstore. I found someone. I said, "I'm Hody Childress's daughter." He said, "You would know what to do with this." And they said, "Yes, we do."
This New Year's Day, Hody passed away. Word of his secret philanthropy soon spread through Geraldine and to Bree Slogan. Last August, her son Eli had a severe reaction to a hornet sting. She rushed to Geraldine Drugs for an EpiPen.
She says it's $800.
What?
Yeah, I like to have died.
But like for so many others, Hody came to the rescue.
But she said, "It's taken care of." And I said, "What?" And she said, "It's taken care of. No questions asked."
And now, Hody's mission is growing.
I had a gentleman from Washington call and say, "I want to, donate 12 months. And then I had a gentleman from Miami call and say, "I'm just going to start a Hody fund in my own town."
I know Dad would like to bring hope to the people that feel desperate, because I feel like there was times in our lives that was really hard, and there was people that stepped in and helped us. We've seen that through his story. It doesn't take much to make a difference.
Our thanks to Jose for that report. And Brooke tells us that she plans to keep the Hody Fund running as long as people keep donating. Such a heartwarming story.
What a legacy there. All right, that does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.